you're watching News 9's Deccan Vahini. I am Pratibha, and the biggest talking point in Karnataka and perhaps the entire country is Karnataka's anti-conversion bill. Now, Karnataka is all set to get the most stringent form of anti-conversion bill. The Protection of Rights to Freedom of Religion Bill 2021 has already been cleared by the cabinet, and it is being discussed in the House. Now, several activists and the opposition have also slammed the BJP government. They have called this bill discriminatory. The BJP has said that this bill has been brought in to check conversion by coercion, force, or allurement. The politics of it aside, there have been several questions that have been coming up on the legality of the bill as well. Is it going to stand legal scrutiny or not? To discuss this, joining me is Senior Supreme Court Advocate Sanjay Hegde. Many thanks for joining us. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, if you've seen the draft of the anti-conversion bill of Karnataka, do you think it's going to stand legal scrutiny?
Well, the Karnataka government and all state governments which come out with these freedom of religion bills ultimately base their argument on a 5-judge judgment of the Supreme Court in called Very Reverend Father Stanislaus. That was a judgment of the court in 1976 when you had the emergency on. That still is the law which would be binding on high courts. However, much water has flown under the bridge after that. You've had a larger bench of the Supreme Court in the Puttaswamy case, which says that the right to privacy, the right to choice in your private choice, is a fundamental right and it requires protection. So things like what you eat, whom you marry, all those come, or what your religion is, all those come within the rights of privacy. So can a state infringe it? I think there is very serious doubt. There is also serious doubt on the Stanislaus decision because it was a decision given in an emergency when the fundamental rights themselves were suspended. So all in all, I do see a huge legal battle ahead. It would be getting ahead of the game to predict which way the legal battle will go. But there are very substantial points of constitutional law and constitutional morality which stand in the way.
Okay. And in fact, in the draft of the bill, there are some clauses that are very similar to the clauses that had been stayed by the Gujarat High Court as well previously. And this also includes conversion for marriage. The Gujarat High Court had said that, if somebody is converting for marriage, then you can't say that it is allurement or, this can't be brought into this ambit of marriage for conversion. So despite the Gujarat High Court saying that clause has been added in Karnataka's anti-conversion bill. So, is that going to be a problem?
Well, let me tell you something about politicians. Well, they may have their doubts about what would be constitutional, what they're elected to do, and what they're not elected to do. But nevertheless, they can't but help playing to their voters or those whom they think are their core voters. So what if the courts then strike it down, or the courts then we at least brought it. So many of these bills are brought into state legislatures precisely for that reason. The government may well be warned that, look, you will run into trouble in the courts on these things. But nevertheless, they brought it. Let me just give you another example from recent memory. You remember in the CA-NRC, one of the things that was really the bone of contention was the exclusion of Muslims from the right to ask for citizenship. There were, I believe, legal experts like Mr. Subhash Kashyap who said that you should not define it religion-wise, but you could say from the minorities of these countries, and you could have precisely the same effect. But no, politicians do want to send a particular political message, and if they think that it gets them votes, they will do it, and then see what will happen later in courts.
Okay, because it's not just that particular clause. The bill also requires a person to give out several personal details, including name, complete address, income, caste, and these are details that are going to be displayed on the district magistrate's office. So there are people who are going to be seeing it. This also includes addresses as well. It's going to be very easily available to everyone. So does this infringe on the right to privacy? Because something similar had happened. Again, I'll go back to another law that had been brought in by Himachal as well. And back then as well, the court had stepped in 2012. But, legally, does it stand or not? And, is it outright, against the right to privacy to give out these details?
See, in fact, these details are asked for a number of purposes. And in practice, what happens is once these details are published, then there are extra legal means like a set of people turning up at the house of the person who proposes to convert and saying, don't go, this, that, and the other. There can be force, there can be allurement, there can be threats to the family, all kinds of things. In fact, there are similar clauses even with regard to marriages. For instance, if you want to get married before a registrar under the Special Marriages Act, you have to put up a notice, which is then put up in the district headquarters. And thereafter, that is often the source material for many set of people who want to prevent inter-community marriages. And I'm not blaming only one side. Both sides tend to do it. So this kind of provision precisely is designed almost to send an invitation to everybody and their grandfather to interfere in what is essentially a personal affair. So yes, the Himachal High Court did set in on privacy grounds. But do you know what happened after that? After that law was struck down, the Himachal legislature has promulgated a new law which pretends to take care of what the court said, but in fact makes it harsher. So that again is at large before the Himachal High Court.
Okay, so then there are ways that, despite the court having said that, the government's bring in new rules. In fact, in this case as well, a few right-wing groups have already now said that, they are going to be taking out details of those who are converting. And if the police doesn't do anything, then they would have to take matters in their own hands. This is something that they have said themselves. So this might be emboldening these fringe groups. And that's the biggest worry, apart from also infringing on the privacy rights. When we talk
Pratibha,
about...
Just 1 minute, just 1 minute. What do the right-wing groups mean when they say we will take things in their own hands? It precisely means that if you convert, we will come and either beat you up or do something worse if you don't reconvert back, if you don't stay. So this is essentially going against not only the freedom of religion, which is promised in the Constitution, it also goes against the freedom of conscience. How you decide to interact with your maker, whether you decide to fold your hands in prayer or you decide to bow in prayer or kneel in prayer, is entirely your choice. It's between you and your maker. Does the mob or does the crowd or does the state have any role in it? I don't think so.
Okay, but any anti-conversion law that's brought in now is seen as something that the BJP government is doing to target the minorities. But it's not just the BJP governments that have had anti-conversion laws. There are several laws that are already applicable in several other states not governed by the BJP as well. So there has been a view that there should be a check on any kind of forced or coerced conversion as well. So how does the government ensure that there are no forced conversions while also ensuring that those who want to willingly convert can do that?
Quite frankly, I don't see why any state or any court or anybody should have any interest in what a person's religious beliefs are. And there is nothing which is final about conversion. I might decide to be a Hindu in the morning, a Muslim in the afternoon, and a Jew in the evening. That's my conscience. That's my thing between me and my maker. So And there is nothing final about it.
Yeah, but the worry is that the economically weaker sections may be targeted.
So what? So what? There is a saying in North India, Ram Roti hai. So if somebody gives you food, somebody decides to give you education, and you say, okay, follow this faith, fine. What's the problem? It's precisely because the faith that you were in has not done it. That somebody is wherever there is a better deal going, don't you have a choice? Suppose, like for instance, if McDonald's is offering a better deal than Burger King, can Burger King say that no, you can't convert to McDonald's? Or supposing you like Manchester City over Manchester United, can Manchester United come out with a law saying that no, anybody who's been a Man U supporter has to remain a Man U supporter? It's just something like that. Even in your choice of your religion, it's a personal choice. Yes, and there is nothing final about that choice.
Well, but I would say that's quite a controversial opinion. I don't know how many would agree on that. But the fact is that it's going to be getting very difficult to convert, even if somebody is willingly doing so. It's going to be a very lengthy process. It's going to have a lot of scrutiny. So does it go against the freedom to practice any religion? For those who want to willingly convert?
Yes, it does. It does. But let me also tell you that all that will happen is that you will have driven actual professions of faith underground. There is nothing which prevents a person from officially remaining in the old religion while practicing the new religion. How far can you go? So in fact, the Supreme Court in the Triple Talaq case, Justice Nariman's judgment, spoke about laws which were manifestly arbitrary, which could be struck down. So in political terms, I can't but help laugh because, Triple Talaq was one of the achievements of this side and all that. But even that judgment has opened the door to a lot of other things, a lot of other concepts, which were not hitherto available. So if your laws get manifestly arbitrary, courts can and do have the power to strike them down.
Okay. So, the bill that has been brought in Karnataka, say we assume it's brought in with whatever is in the draft without any changes at all, then it prohibits conversion by misrepresentation, force, fraud, or allurement of marriage. Are these going to be very difficult to prove in court? And, in several of these cases, because it's so difficult to prove in court, it also becomes a case of harassment. So, does that become a bigger problem?
Of course, it becomes a bigger problem. Why? See, there's a classic definition of tyranny. Tyranny is the ability to make harsh laws and to use it selectively against your enemies. So, yeah, you make a harsh law, you just decide to haul up whoever. Tomorrow, supposing they don't like you or they don't like me, they can say, no, this one is has secretly converted without notifying the district authorities, without going through the processes. And the burden of proof is not upon the prosecution, it's upon the defense in this law. Now, how do you prove a negative? Of course, I've not converted. I don't believe in God. How do you prove it? You just can't.
Yes.
So this will run into trouble in the courts, and I do think that even those who have promulgated it or brought it into being do not really believe in all that is said out there, but they know that it is a very good weapon to use against anybody they want.
Okay, so it's more of a political law that's going to be in place.
All laws are political, but the question is whether laws are practical or not, whether they are arbitrary or not. So this is a law which is designed to be arbitrarily used against anybody and everybody who has a conscience.
Okay, so in closing, I want to ask you, now that the law has already been introduced in Karnataka, would you say that, the political party is also well aware that it's going to be very difficult to push it through because of the legal tangles that it is going to face? So it's going to be more of a, political say that they will have in the coming days? Or would you say that this is something that people of the community in Karnataka will have to worry about? Because even if there is a legal hurdle, if the government wants it, it can bring it to power.
No. See, as long as governments have majorities in the legislature, that's in both houses, they can pass any law. But the limitations are the Constitution. You can't pass a law which is unconstitutional. And those who will enforce the Constitution are the courts. I have full faith in the courts in the country, but I do not have faith in the wisdom of parliamentarians, especially when they pass ridiculous laws like this. Now, please look, in a city like Bangalore, where people profess all kinds of faiths, where supposing, and which is the tech and app capital of India. It is your entire showpiece, show window to the outside world. Now, if you have a few arrests because of a few thugs somewhere or there, can you imagine the international impact that it is going to have? I do not think that this is a wise law. It has been passed in the Assembly. It awaits passing in the Council. I believe that in the Council, they may not currently have all the votes, but I would earnestly implore all the members of the Legislative Council to stand up for the Constitution and to allow freedom of conscience to every individual.
All right. Thank you so much. In fact, many states already have an anti-conversion law in place. Like we said, Odisha was the first one to bring it. Arunachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Himachal, Jharkhand. We have several states that have existing laws to check illegal conversions. Now, in Karnataka, it will be interesting to see whether this stringent law will be able to pass the legal scrutiny, or whether it will be another law that just becomes a handy tool for those in power. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.